I'm glad you're here with me today. Stay until the end of my story, and please tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. The smell of fresh cornbread and the sound of the morning news were how I had started every day for 31 years. My kitchen faced east, and on clear mornings, the light came through the curtains in long golden strips that fell across the oak table where my husband Thomas and I used to share our coffee. Thomas had been gone for 9 years now, but I still set 2 mugs out of habit. Some mornings I caught myself and put one back. Other mornings I left them both out because the kitchen felt less empty that way. My name is Dorothy, and I was 67 years old when my life began to unravel in a way I never could have anticipated. I had worked 32 years as an office manager for a pediatric clinic in Columbus, Ohio. I had been careful with money my whole life. The kind of careful that comes from watching your parents clip coupons at the kitchen table. Thomas and I had never taken a vacation that wasn't within driving distance. We drove used cars and bought our clothes off the clearance rack and told ourselves we were saving for something important. When Thomas died of a stroke at 61, that something important turned out to be my security. He left me the house, a modest savings account, and a life insurance payout that, together with my retirement fund, added up to just under $200,000. Not rich, but safe, comfortable. Exactly what we had planned. My daughter was the light of my life. She had her father's dark eyes and his way of tilting her head when she was thinking hard about something. After college, she moved to Cincinnati, and I missed her every single day. When she called to tell me she had met someone, I was so genuinely happy that I cried. His name was Marcus, and he was in commercial real estate. My daughter brought him home for Thanksgiving the year they had been dating for 6 months. He was tall and easy with a smile. The kind of man who refills everyone's water glass without being asked, and remembers names on the second meeting. I liked him immediately. They were married the following spring in a small ceremony at a botanical garden outside the city. I paid for the catering and the flowers without hesitation. My daughter was my only child, and I would have sold furniture to be there in the front row watching her walk down the aisle. She was radiant, Marcus cried when he saw her, and I decided then that I had been right to like him. They settled in Cincinnati in a rented apartment not far from where Marcus worked. My daughter had a job she loved at a graphic design firm. For the first year, everything was lovely. They called on Sundays and visited on holidays, and whenever I drove down to see them, my son-in-law would make reservations at a restaurant I never could have afforded on my own and waive off any suggestion that we split the bill. He seemed generous and successful, and I told myself that my daughter had chosen well. It was during their second year of marriage that the first request came. My daughter called on a Wednesday afternoon, which was unusual. She had a carefully casual tone that I recognized from her teenage years, the voice she used when she was about to ask for something she was embarrassed to ask for. "Mom, I hate to bring this up, but Marcus and I are in a bit of a cash squeeze right now. His commission cycle is off this quarter, and we have a couple of bills that are due before the end of the month. Would it be possible for you to lend us $800? Just until Marcus closes the Hendricks deal, which should be by the 15th. $800. I had $800. I had considerably more than $800, and she knew it. And I understood the hesitation in her voice was about more than just the money. It was about the careful balance of independence she had always been proud of. "Of course, sweetheart," I said. "I'll transfer it today." She thanked me 3 times, and I told her to stop thanking me. The 15th came and went. So did the following month. I did not bring it up because I told myself that marriages go through tight spots and that $800 was not worth straining our relationship over. I told myself that a lot. Over the months that followed, the requests came in a rhythm that I did not recognize as a rhythm until much later. $1,200 for a car repair, $600 for a medical bill Marcus had from before they were married, $1,500 for a professional certification course that would help him move into commercial development. Each one arrived with a specific reason and a specific timeline for repayment. The reasons were always plausible. The timeline was always just far enough away to feel real, but close enough to feel soon. By the time their second anniversary came around, I had lent them somewhere close to $9,000. I had stopped keeping precise track because every time I thought about the number, I felt something I did not want to feel about my own daughter. So I stopped thinking about the number. I told myself, this is what mothers do. This is what family means. What I did not understand yet was that this is exactly what they were counting on. The shift happened gradually and then all at once, the way Thomas used to say trouble always arrives. My son-in-law began calling me directly. which he had never done before. He was warm and familiar on the phone, and he talked to me about real estate trends and local property values in Columbus in a way that made me feel smart and included. He told me he was working on a development deal that would triple his commission if he could get in early. He mentioned, almost offhandedly, that his own parents had invested and were going to do very well from it. I listened. I was flattered to be included in grown-up financial conversations. I was lonely. Those three things together are a dangerous combination, and I know that now. One evening, he asked if I had ever thought about making my money work harder for me. Sitting in a savings account, he said. It was barely keeping up with inflation. He was not wrong. He told me about a joint investment account he was setting up with a few trusted family members, people who wanted to benefit from his professional expertise without the risks of the open market. He made it sound like an exclusive favor he was doing for the people he cared most about. "I'm not asking you to do anything you're not comfortable with, Dorothy," he said, and his use of my name felt warm and reassuring. "I just want you to have the same opportunities the rest of us are taking advantage of." I told him I needed to think about it. He said, "Of course, take all the time you need." He called again 3 days later, not to press me, he said, but just to see if I had any questions. I had questions. He answered every one of them smoothly and knowledgeably. And when I asked if my daughter knew about this, he said she was the one who had suggested including me. I transferred $30,000 into the joint account 2 weeks later. For the first 3 months, I received a monthly statement that showed my investment growing at exactly the rate my son-in-law had described. The statements were professional-looking documents with a company logo and a customer service number at the bottom. I showed one to my neighbor Carol, who was 70 and had worked in finance before she retired, and she said it looked legitimate to her. What I did not know, and would not know for another year, was that those statements were fabricated. There was no investment. There was no growth. There was only my $30,000 slowly being spent on a lifestyle I was not invited to observe. While I was reading those false statements with my morning coffee, my son-in-law was quietly taking the next step. He had spent months establishing himself as someone I trusted with financial matters. Now he used that trust to suggest something larger. He came to Columbus alone one Saturday, which was unusual enough that I made a pot roast and set the table with the good dishes. After dinner, he settled into the armchair across from me, with the easy confidence of someone who has already decided how a conversation will end. "Dorothy, I want to talk to you about something important. And I want you to know that this comes from a place of genuine care for your future." He told me that the real estate market in Columbus was in a unique window of opportunity. He told me he had identified a commercial property that could be purchased, developed, and resold within 18 months for a profit that would substantially increase my financial security. He told me that the only obstacle was collateral for the development loan. He told me he needed me to co-sign a business loan using my house as collateral. "Just temporarily," he said. 18 months maximum. The return would more than compensate for any risk, and the risk, he assured me, was minimal. I want to be honest about something, because I think it is important for the people listening to understand. I was not stupid. I was not senile. I was not confused. I was a 67-year-old woman who was lonely and who loved her daughter and who had spent 9 years making every major financial decision alone. I was a woman who had been carefully groomed for 14 months to trust one specific person's judgment on money. I was a woman who had been told, repeatedly and in various loving ways, that this man was taking care of my future. I said I needed to speak with my daughter first. My son-in-law's expression did not change, but something in the room shifted. "Of course," he said. "Talk to her. She's already on board, but talk to her." I called my daughter that night. She sounded tired and slightly impatient, which was unusual for her. She confirmed that Marcus had talked to her about it, that she trusted his professional judgment completely, and that she thought it was a good opportunity for all of them. When I tried to ask more detailed questions, she said, "Mom, Marcus knows what he's doing. He does this for a living." There was something in her voice I did not recognize, something clipped and far away. I signed the co-signature documents 3 weeks later. My son-in-law drove up from Cincinnati with a folder of paperwork and a notary he had arranged himself. It was done in 40 minutes at my kitchen table. I am going to pause here and ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where you looked back and could see exactly the moment things went wrong? Leave a comment telling me what city you're watching from, and tell me if this story sounds familiar to you. For 6 months, nothing seemed wrong. The investment statements kept arriving. My son-in-law called regularly. My daughter visited twice and seemed, if anything, slightly more distant than usual. I told myself she was busy. I told myself this is what young married life looks like. Then the statements stopped coming. I waited 2 weeks before I called the customer service number on the letterhead. The number was disconnected. I called my son-in-law. He did not answer. I called my daughter. She picked up on the 4th ring. Mom, I know. We're dealing with it. Marcus had some complications with the deal, and things got delayed. It's fine. It's being handled. What complications? I asked. Vivino. I don't know all the details. You need to talk to Marcus. I called Marcus 17 times over the following 10 days. He answered twice. Both times he told me the deal was restructuring and that my money was safe and that I needed to stop panicking because panic makes things worse. On a Tuesday morning in October, I received a letter from a bank I had never done business with. It informed me that a loan of $95,000 secured by my property at my home address was 90 days past due. It informed me that foreclosure proceedings would begin if the balance was not addressed within 30 days. I had to read the letter 4 times before my mind would accept what it was saying. My hands did not shake. I remember noticing the strange stillness in my hands while my whole world rearranged itself around me. I set the letter on the table next to my coffee cup. I sat with it for a long time, and then I called my neighbor Carol. Carol came over within 10 minutes, still in her garden coat. She read the letter twice, set it down, and looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her face before. Dorothy, she said carefully, how much of this did you know about? I co-signed a business loan, I said. He told me it was $30,000. He told me it was 18 months. This letter says $95,000. I know. What followed was the quietest week of my life. I did not call my daughter. I did not call my son-in-law. I sat with the letter, and I pulled out every financial document I had, and I spread them across the dining room table, and I read through everything I had signed with the new and terrible clarity of someone who understands, finally, what they are looking at. The co-signature documents did not say $30,000. I had signed for $95,000. The loan had been taken out 18 months ago. At the same time, he had been showing me those fabricated investment statements. The investment account I had transferred $30,000 into was registered to an LLC with my son-in-law's initials. There were no returns. There were no other investors. My $30,000 had been deposited into a business account and spent. Somewhere over those 18 months, while I had been reading false statements and feeling grateful to be included, my son-in-law had borrowed against my home for nearly $100,000, and my daughter had helped him do it. Carol sat across from me while I read. When I finished, she asked me what I wanted to do. I want my house, I said. That was the only thing I was certain of. Everything else I would figure out later. But I was not going to lose Thomas's house. Carol knew an attorney. She had used him 3 years earlier when her own financial situation became complicated after her husband's death. His name was Raymond Okafor, and he specialized in financial fraud and elder financial abuse. Carol called him from my kitchen and made an appointment for the following morning. Raymond Okafor was a precise, unhurried man with a close-cut beard and reading glasses that he used constantly, picking them up and setting them down as he worked through documents. He asked me to bring everything. I brought everything. He spent 40 minutes reading, in near silence. Then he looked up. Mrs. Dorothy, he said, I want to make sure I understand the full picture before I say anything alarming. Were you ever given a formal disclosure document for the investment account? A prospectus? A risk statement? Anything of that nature? No. Were you given a copy of the loan documents before the day you signed them? No. He brought them the day he came with the notary. Did anyone advise you to have independent legal review before signing? No. He nodded slowly. What you're describing, he said, setting his glasses down, is a pattern of financial exploitation. The investment account with false statements constitutes wire fraud. The loan documentation, based on what I'm reading, may contain material misrepresentations about the nature of the collateral agreement. And given your age and the familial trust relationship involved, This falls squarely within the definition of elder financial abuse under Ohio statute. He told me we had several options. We could file a complaint with the state attorney general's office. We could pursue civil action to void the loan agreement on grounds of fraud and misrepresentation. We could file a criminal complaint. He recommended all three simultaneously because speed mattered and because people like my son-in-law, once they realized consequences were coming, had a tendency to move money and disappear. Will I lose my house? I asked. Not if we move quickly, he said. The bank wants its money, not your property. If we can demonstrate that the loan was obtained through fraud, we have grounds to challenge their ability to foreclose. It is not a guaranteed outcome, but it is a strong case. I signed the retainer agreement that afternoon. The next morning I called my daughter. I had rehearsed what I wanted to say, but when she picked up the phone, all of it left me. I got a letter from the bank, I said, about a $95,000 loan on my house. Silence. I need you to tell me what you knew, I said. And I need you to tell me the truth. What followed was 30 minutes that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. My daughter cried. She told me she had known about the loan, that Marcus had told her it was necessary for the deal, that she had trusted him. She said she had not known the amount was $95,000. She had thought it was closer to 40. She said things had been difficult between them for months. She said she was sorry. She said it in the broken, exhausted voice of someone who had been lying to themselves for a long time and had just stopped. I told her I loved her. I told her I also had an attorney and that I needed her cooperation with the legal process. I told her that love and accountability were not mutually exclusive. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "What do you need from me?" "Everything you know," I said, in writing. She sent a 20-page email to Raymond Okafor the following day. It detailed every conversation she had been part of, every document she had seen, every transfer she knew about. She had been complicit, she wrote, because she had been afraid of her husband and because she had told herself the story would end well. She was deeply ashamed. She was cooperative. My son-in-law, when contacted by Raymond's office, chose a different response. He retained his own attorney and began constructing a counter-narrative. He claimed I had been a fully informed participant in a legitimate business arrangement that had encountered unforeseen market complications. He claimed I had signed documents willingly and with complete understanding. He suggested, through his attorney's language, that my current distress was a sign of cognitive decline that made me an unreliable narrator of events. Raymond had expected this. They always go for competency when the facts don't favor them, he told me. It's designed to make you feel defensive and to make you seem unstable in front of a judge. We're going to get ahead of it. He arranged for a full cognitive evaluation by an independent neuropsychologist, a woman who had no relationship to anyone involved in the case. The evaluation took 3 hours. The results were unambiguous. My memory, reasoning, and decision-making capacity were all well within the normal range for someone my age. The neuropsychologist noted in her report that I demonstrated above-average verbal comprehension and recall. Raymond also subpoenaed the financial records for the LLC my son-in-law had used to receive my investment. The records showed a straightforward story. My $30,000 had been deposited and spent over 9 months on personal expenses, restaurant charges, hotel stays, jewelry, clothing, a motorcycle. The investment had never existed. He obtained the original loan documents from the bank and had them reviewed by a forensic document examiner. The examiner found that a page in the middle of the document package, the page containing the full loan amount, had been formatted differently from the others and inserted after the original document had been prepared. My son-in-law had shown me a version of the agreement where the amounts were described in language that was deliberately difficult to parse. The notary, it turned out, had been a friend of his with a recently obtained commission. The morning we walked into the courthouse, I wore the blue wool blazer I had bought when I was promoted to senior office manager in 2009. It still fit. My daughter walked in with me, pale and quiet, with her own attorney beside her. She had agreed to testify. That had cost her something. I knew it had cost her something, and I was grateful. My son-in-law sat at the other table with his attorney, and he looked, for the first time since I had known him, like he was wearing a costume that no longer fit. The easy smile was gone. The comfortable confidence was gone. He looked like what he was, a man who had spent 2 years counting on other people's love to protect him from consequences, and who had just run out of love to count on. The judge was a woman in her late 50s with the expression of someone who had heard every variation of this story before and had very little patience for it. Raymond presented the evidence methodically. The false investment statements, the LLC records, the forensic analysis of the loan documents, my daughter's testimony, the cognitive evaluation report, the timeline laid out on a chart that showed exactly how each step of trust building had preceded each step of financial exploitation. My son-in-law's attorney argued that the entire arrangement had been a family financial partnership entered into freely by all parties, that market conditions had led to losses no one could have predicted, and that my current legal action was driven by a misunderstanding of complex financial instruments. The judge asked my son-in-law's attorney one question. If your client's position is that these were freely agreed upon business arrangements, she said, can you explain why the investment account statements sent to the plaintiff were fabricated? His attorney asked for a brief recess. When we returned, my son-in-law's attorney indicated that his client was prepared to discuss a settlement. Raymond had anticipated this too. The settlement took 2 additional weeks to negotiate. The outcome was this. The loan agreement was voided on grounds of fraud and material misrepresentation. The bank, presented with the evidence of how the loan had been obtained, agreed to release the lien on my property. My son-in-law signed a civil judgment, agreeing to repay the $30,000 from the investment account, structured as monthly payments over 5 years. Criminal charges for wire fraud and elder financial abuse were filed by the state attorney general's office. Those proceedings were separate from our civil case and would take longer to resolve. But Raymond told me the evidence was strong. I walked out of that courthouse on a Thursday afternoon in April and stood on the front steps in the thin spring sunlight and breathed in a way I had not breathed in a long time. Carol was waiting at the bottom of the steps. She had brought coffee in a thermos, the good kind she ordered from a specialty roaster in Vermont. We sat on a bench near the parking lot and shared it, and neither of us felt the need to say very much. My daughter called that evening. She was staying with a friend in Cincinnati. She and my son-in-law had separated the week after she submitted her testimony. She cried on the phone and told me she was ashamed of herself. Not just for what had happened, but for how long she had let it happen, for how many times she had talked herself into trusting him, over-trusting her own instincts, and over-trusting me. I kept telling myself it was going to work out, she said, that he knew what he was doing, that I would have been disloyal to doubt him. I understand that, I said. I felt the same way. You shouldn't have had to fight this alone. I wasn't alone, I said. I had Carol. And eventually, I had you. We did not pretend the previous 2 years had not happened. We did not pretend that trust is rebuilt the way a light switch works, instantly and completely. But we started. We talked every Sunday, and in August, she drove up to Columbus, and we spent a weekend going through old photo albums at the kitchen table, and it was painful and sweet and necessary in the way that only truly honest conversations with someone you love can be. That fall, I began speaking at a monthly meeting at my local library, a group organized for older adults on the subject of financial safety. Some of the people who came were already in difficult situations and needed practical guidance. Some came because they had a feeling something was wrong but had not yet found the language for it. I told them what I had learned, not from a place of bitterness, but because I believed then and believe now that these stories need to be told out loud. I told them that exploitation rarely looks like what we expect it to look like. It does not arrive wearing a villain's face. It arrives wearing the face of someone we love, someone who has spent months learning exactly which of our needs to speak to. Loneliness, the desire to be useful, the fear of being a burden, the hope that our family will be okay. I told them that saying no to someone you love is one of the hardest things a person can do. But that love is not the same as access. That generosity is not the same as surrender. That a person who genuinely loves you will respect a boundary, and a person who uses your love against you has already told you something important about how much they value it. On my 69th birthday, my daughter came to Columbus, and we planted a rose bush in the backyard together, a yellow climber that Thomas would have liked. It was a small thing. It was also not a small thing. My house is still mine. My savings are diminished but slowly recovering. My name is still on the deed and only on the deed, and every morning the light still comes through the kitchen curtains, the way it always has. falling across the oak table where I drink my coffee in the quiet that is mine. Raymond sends a card every Christmas. Carol and I walk together on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. My daughter calls on Sundays without fail. I am 69 years old. I have made peace with the fact that I was too trusting for too long. I have also made peace with the fact that protecting myself required me to act against people I loved, and that doing the right thing and doing the easy thing are almost never the same thing. If you are watching this and something in my story sounds familiar, I want you to hear this directly. Your instincts are not paranoia. Protecting your home and your savings is not selfishness. Asking for documentation is not an insult, and it is never too late to say, "This stops now." What city are you watching from? Leave it in the comments below. And if this story meant something to you, please consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for being here with me today. In the cine, I will see you in the next story.